Well, hi, this is Josh Fonger, and welcome to the WTS podcast, where we help business owners move from working in their business to working on their business, mastering their systems so that they can simplify growth. And today I have a special guest. I have Steve Gordon here. Steve is the author of the Unstoppable Referrals book. It's 10x referrals, half the effort, and his latest book, The Exponential Network Strategy. He's the host of the Unstoppable CEO podcast, where we met just a few weeks ago, and has written over 400 articles on marketing for service businesses. Through his firm, he helps service business entrepreneurs create leveraged marketing systems so they can spend less time on business development and more time on what matters most. And his website is unstoppableceo.net. And I'm really looking forward to digging into Steve's systems for how he helps service business entrepreneurs grow through referrals and through their network. Okay, all right. So Steve, let's start from the beginning. I'm sure a lot of people in our audience don't know who you are. So tell us the story about how you got into this kind of business, how you wrote these books, and just lay the foundation for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Josh. This is going to be fun. You know, this is kind of act two for me. I started out my business career in a little tiny discipline of engineering called geomatics. And so I tell people I'm actually a recovering engineer, and I owned a consulting firm in that industry for about 12 years. I actually started there out of college. I was a 10th employee, became the CEO at the age of 28, and then ultimately took over, bought that business from the founder, and it was fabulous experience, and we had a lot of success growing that business. But I'll tell you, what I found in that is that I really enjoyed the business development side of things. I enjoyed sales. I enjoyed marketing, and so I had an opportunity to go and leave that and create a new business where we now work with other service businesses to do just that. And I'll tell you what I found is that most of the people who are in that kind of business, who they went to college and got, a particular degree that trained them how to do a particular type of practice, they love doing the work that they do. They love working with their clients. It's very interesting to them. But along the way, they never really were taught how to go and get clients. And it's like this crazy wake-up call, like, okay, now you're a newly minted engineer or attorney or doctor or accountant or whatever. Now you've got to go figure out how to get clients. And it's a big challenge. And for most of them, it's a really difficult and uncomfortable thing to do. And so that's who we serve. That's who we're a hero to. And we really, what I love about what you guys do is you're all about systems, and we're all about systems as it relates to attracting clients and business development. Mm-hmm. So that's how we've gotten to this point. We've been doing this in the current business for the last 8 years.
8 years. Well, very good. And I'm excited to dig into this because being a coach, being a consultant, things are going great when I have a full load of clients and a full book of business, and I don't even think about marketing. We've gone years not thinking about marketing at all. And then a few big clients will stop and we'll say, maybe we should do some marketing. And so I'm looking forward to learning a few things, so we can build up the systems, marketing systems. All right. So what is the biggest hurdle that service businesses have with regards to marketing? Like, why don't they grow? Why can't they figure it out?
Well, for most of them, the root cause, the reason that they're not growing is that they just have a lack of demand for what they're doing. In other words, they haven't gone out and created significant enough demand to have consistent growth. And so we talk with firm owners all the time, and they describe it as living this kind of feast and famine existence. And you alluded to it there. You lose a couple of big clients, everything seems really great. And you lose a couple of big clients, you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And most of the time that results from not having a system that generates leads on a regular basis. And then, in these types of businesses, it's typically a long sales cycle. It's a high trust, high dollar type transaction. And so you've got to develop a relationship with that potential client over time. It's not like we're selling hamburgers, you can decide now and buy it, in 5 minutes. Most of the time there's a discovery process. There's not only discovery of the solution you offer, but oftentimes your clients have to discover that they really do have this problem. They often don't understand it very well themselves. They feel the pain, but they don't understand what's causing it. And so all of that takes time. And for that to work so that you can grow successfully, you really need a system in place that is working all of the time. And so that's why we hear this challenge of, and I hear it all the time, that they're going through these cycles of, they market to get a lot of business, they get busy, and they're working with those clients. And then all of a sudden those engagements end, and now it's all of a sudden, we don't have anything. And so they cycle through this over and over again. You've got to have a marketing process that can run and won't kill you, so that even when you're really, really busy, it's still nurturing those relationships so that when the engagements you have are done, there's more people in line waiting to go.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay. So it's this moving from feast and famine to actually having control. And we talk a lot about control at Work the System, is you want to have control over everything you can. And part of that is the marketing. So for us, we, I think it used to be around 14 months was our average time someone was on our list until they bought. Now it's 10 months. And so we're trying to, shrink that time frame. But we know it's a long time. So it's not, hey, what did we do last week to make a sale? It's, hey, we actually have a longer duration that we have to really nurture these folks, and we do podcasts, blog posts, things like that are just part of business. And I suppose for each business that you work with, it's about getting the recipe right, what connects with their market. Now, I was reading through your materials before this call, and you have these 3 fundamental systems that you work with specifically that help create this kind of a demand. So why don't you reveal that secret that you do, and hopefully those listening can kind of capture that idea.
Well, and I hate to disappoint, it's no big secret. There are 3 parts to getting clients. You have to open relationships with new humans that can pay you. You've got to nurture those relationships so that there's trust that will support a transaction, hopefully a transformational transaction. Mm-hmm. And you've got to have a way, as you're nurturing those relationships, to motivate people to move now, not later. And so, and we can break down what each of those really means. But I mean, business development basically boils down to those 3 things. And when we're talking with a business owner that is struggling, they're not getting enough clients, it's usually because they're lacking any kind of system in one of those areas, or sometimes in all of them. But if you're missing one, the whole thing will break down. And so,
yeah, well, I'd love to break each one of those pieces apart. So the first one, talking to new humans, there's got to be, so how do you choose which humans? So, so the average, attorney, or someone who's, an AC repairman, or someone who provides these services out there in the marketplace, how do they find those places and build systems that actually are scalable?
Sure. Well, the first piece is to get focused. Okay. And most businesses have really just 2 criteria for who their prospect is. It's anybody with a heartbeat and a wallet, and they'll go after them. And what we find is that the more you can get focused, and this is where almost every business owner will push back, because they say, no, I don't want to, if I do that, I'm going to miss this opportunity over here. Uh-huh. And what we've seen when we apply this, we get our clients to actually go through this process, is that having that focus by coming in and saying, you know what, I'm going to be the hero for this type of person, and getting really clear about who that is and narrow about who that is, all of a sudden you begin to see opportunities that you never saw before. They were there, but because you weren't really tuned into that type of person trying to attract them, it becomes very hard to see. So as you focus, the ability to open those relationships speeds up. You see more opportunities to do it. So that's really the first key, is being able to go out and start those relationships with people. And that's really, really difficult. So what that looks like for most service providers is they say, okay, well, I got to go get business. I'm going to start going to the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce has got, they've got these leads groups that meet at lunch, and they've got a mixer next week, and they put a conference on every year. And I'm going to start getting involved in all of that. And they do all of that. And pretty soon they're spread across all of those things. And they do that for a while, and they find that when they show up to those events, that everyone else is there for the exact same purpose, to sell the other people in the room. Namely, if you're there, they're going to sell you. what they find very quickly is that it's hard to get results out of that because it's not a focused activity, and it's not dialed in. And most of the business owners that we come across, while they want new business, sometimes it's a struggle to walk into a room like that and go meet somebody and somehow convince them, hit them over the head with a bat and drag them back to the back to the cave and turn them into a client. And so to transform that, to make that easier, we typically will work with a business owner, and once we've identified who they want to go after, we'll help them connect the dots and see, okay, who are the influencers that can refer them, and who are the prospects, by name, by company, that they really would want to do business with. And once we've identified those groups, we'll use both a networking strategy and a referral strategy, which we can get into, but to go out and target those very specific people.
Okay.
So that's really the essence of opening the relationships, and it's a much more focused and effective strategy.
So if I'm hearing right, for those listening, you'd get really focused on a strategy first off. So not going broad, but just going deep in a particular area. And then you mentioned the influencer. So maybe not necessarily the person who's going to give you the money directly, but the person who has lots of influence with people who are connected to that market, and then also directly to the customer. So you said a referral and a network strategy. So what's the difference between those two?
Well, it's just in the approach. And so what we find after doing this now for the last 8 years, what we're finding is kind of most effective with the least amount of effort is actually a networking strategy. And what we do is we work with our clients to create a podcast, a media outlet, much like this. And the podcast, everybody likes to get focused on the podcast, and there's, people with millions of downloads in iTunes and all this great stuff. That's really all window dressing for this whole process. But when you create a podcast, you now have a media outlet, and it's a fairly unique media outlet today. And it gives you the opportunity to go out and reach out to a prospect in your market or an influencer and say, I've created this podcast for our industry. Hey, Mr. Prospect, you've been pretty successful in the industry, and I would love to interview you and highlight your success and really, be able to share the things that you've learned throughout the course of your career with all of our listeners. And rather than trying to go in and beat the door down and say, hey, I'm here to sell you something, it's a much more elegant, easier way to get in the door and begin to build a relationship. Again, the goal is to build trust over time, not to sell something immediately, at least with most of the businesses that we work with. And just like you described, your own sales cycle, there's that longer amount of time. And so we find approaching from that perspective as starting points much easier to get in the door, and you build a real relationship very quickly. And the key to it is that you're giving that person pretty unique value. You're offering the opportunity, particularly if you're selling business to business, you're offering them the opportunity to get promoted. The thing every business owner wants anyway. And you're starting the relationship there.
And it doesn't cost them anything except for a half hour of their time.
That's it.
So make it simple for them.
Yeah. And you give them a very unique experience, so you're memorable. You and I do podcasts, so it's sort of a normal thing for us. But for, the other 99.9% of the business world, it's a very unique experience to be asked to be interviewed anywhere in media.
Yeah, definitely. You might be getting into this in a little bit here, but I was just thinking about a client I had who he wanted to differentiate himself, and he's an insurance salesman, just selling life insurance and health insurance. And so when Obamacare was just coming out, it's supposed to have been like 7-8 years ago, 6 years ago, and it was before it came out. So no one really knew what was going to happen. And he promoted everywhere that he was the Obamacare expert. He knew what was going to happen with insurance. He knew what was going to happen with all their premiums. And all he had was the same information everyone else had, but he would present on the stage about, this is what we know so far. And he doubled his business that year just because he offered something for free. He had authority, like a podcast gives you authority and credibility. And you'll probably talk about that in a little bit here, but I think that was kind of a unique thing is give something away for free, build a relationship, be in a place of authority, and then people will over time trust you. So what's next? So you go out there, in your case, you're doing a podcast, but I think in another case, other folks could do some other media outlet, even a newsletter or some way
Sure.
to build that credibility and not go directly for the sale,
Mm-hmm.
but to warm up their market in a big way. What's the next step?
Well, the next step then is to nurture that relationship over time.
Okay.
And time is the critical factor. And most people get themselves in a position where they need a client now, unfortunately. And oftentimes there's no easy solution to that other than get out and hustle. And unfortunately, you're going to have to do some things that you might not want to do to get over that. And once you're past that point, we like to see businesses build these systems that create an asset in the business. And so as you're building up this list of people, you've started these relationships, you need to stay in touch with them. And what we see is there's really two approaches typically that folks will take to nurturing those relationships. One will be to not nurture them at all. They've created the lead. If the lead didn't give them a check right away, they forget about them because they don't have a system in place. They don't have any place to put them. The other thing that we see oftentimes is that people will go down the newsletter route, and newsletters are hugely effective. And I've said many times before that if I could only have one marketing strategy, it'd probably be a newsletter. What we find with the newsletters, though, is that because they have to be written and the business owner's got to sit down and they look at it like this big project they've got to go through, you got to figure out what to write about. And then most people don't see themselves as writers, so they got to go through that whole process. We see newsletters start and go for about two issues, 2 months, and then they stop for 3 or 4 months, and then they start up again for a month, and then they stop, and it's really inconsistent. And that inconsistency actually erodes trust in your prospects. One of the things that really supports trust is being very, very consistent and showing up and being predictable. And one of the reasons that we like these interviews is that they have this wonderful byproduct. So we're sitting here, we're having a fun conversation today, hopefully informative for everyone listening. We're recording it so they can all eavesdrop in and hopefully learn something. And then you're probably going to email this out to all of your prospects and clients. We're going to email it out to all of our prospects and clients. We both just got really great nurture content. And we will have invested maybe an hour of time by the time we're done talking.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great way to do it. And this newsletter, I'm working with a client right now in the newsletter, and real smart guy, smart team, but just not a writer. And after me telling him about he should use a newsletter, he works for an investment firm, and I said, what you need to do is gather the good ideas, audio files, send them to a copywriter, have them write it for you. And so that's the process now. He, his partner, audio files, the copywriter writes the newsletter for them, and that's how it gets done. That's a process. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, it never get done because writing is hard. It's hard, yeah, for a lot of folks. So you do the podcast, the authority, build that network, spread it out there in a simple way. And I agree with you on all these points. So then what happens next? They're nurtured for a while in a simple way. And then how do you get to the close of the sale?
Sure. Well, so, I mean, there are a lot of people who will be listening to this who have done newsletters for a long time. And what they'll all probably admit is that while it's great and it nurtures people, it's really hard to get somebody to take action and jump into your sales process directly from a newsletter. And so you need a bridge in there between all this nurture that you're doing, whether it's through, podcast or email marketing or whatever you're doing. You need a bridge from there that can apply some scarcity and urgency, because that's really what forces people to act now rather than later. And what we found best to make that happen is a presentation, a timed event presentation. So, and everybody listening has attended these. Maybe it was a live in-person seminar that a business held and you went to. Maybe it's a webinar that you've attended. And the reason that they work really well is it allows you to be honest and ethical and believable in the way that you apply that scarcity and urgency. We've all experienced scarcity and urgency when we're, it's the proverbial guy that says, oh, we've got this free ebook for you, but we only have 100 copies available. Right? It's a free ebook,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an infinite number of copies available. You don't want to offer that kind of scarcity urgency, but with an event, the calendar does it for you. It's happening at this time on this date, show up or not, and it gives your prospects an opportunity to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Some are going to pass. Most of them who get that offer are going to pass on that decision at that moment. That's okay. But for the ones who are ready, it's like opening the door for them, saying, "Hey, come on in. Here's the next step."
Mm-hmm.
And then in that presentation, you take them through, an educational process that's much more focused, and then you offer them an opportunity to have an appointment with you.
Okay, so for you, it's presentation with some education, and not a sale, but a consultation, like one-on-one chat about, okay, if you qualify. How do you make, because it's certainly going on in the marketplace right now, is these automated webinars so people know they're not live. And they know they don't really need to show up because there'll be a replay somewhere floating around. Do you, what's the philosophy on that piece of the puzzle?
Well, we use them. They are extremely effective.
Mm-hmm.
I do think at this stage, everybody knows they're not really live. We don't recommend that, you say that they're live if it's not live. Be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it does provide some convenience. And, for the prospect, what works about them is that for those prospects who are really ready, they're going to commit the time. And that tells you a lot about that prospect and how really prepared they are.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who might register for the webinar and then not attend or go and get the replay. In fact, we went for 2 years and didn't offer replays, and we found that didn't affect sales at all because we weren't getting any sales from the people who were going to the replays anyway. The problem wasn't urgent enough for them, and that's okay. But having an event like that really gives you an opportunity to see who's real and who's not.
Okay.
Before they enter the sales process. And it really will eliminate having to talk to a lot of people who aren't properly prepared. The other thing that it does is it gives you the chance to pre-sell them. So you can essentially lay out your approach.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how we do everything. Here's, what's involved. Here's the problem we solve, all of that. So that by the time that prospect is there, it takes you out of the position of having to sell them. They're pre-sold. They essentially know what you offer, and they still want to have a meeting with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's very different than, I was talking with a prospect actually who come through one of our webinars earlier today, a couple of hours ago. And he said they've got a company that does these cold emails, doing outreach for them, and been doing it for a year. And he said, yeah, we get a lot of meetings, but sometimes when we're on that meeting, the prospect doesn't know why they're there. It's just hard to be really productive,
Yep. Yeah. So it's the qualifying process. So you have the ability to attract them, warm them, qualify them with are they going to show up? Have they learned something? And are they committing to actually having an appointment? And they're not going to waste your time. And I think that's a key system for a lot of service-based industries to not waste your time with the wrong traffic. Which means you need a bigger flow of traffic coming to you in the first place. Otherwise, you're afraid of, I might miss one, so you kind of chase all of them. Interesting. So you didn't see any drop off at all when you went from giving the replays versus not giving the replays?
Not a bit.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to try that. I feel bad not giving the replays out. I don't know.
I know. We give them out now, but yeah.
It didn't really matter. Okay.
Didn't matter. So.
Okay. So you put then what is the next step? So your whole company is about growing these service-based industry entrepreneurs with a system to get them to sell. Do you also have a system for closing once they get to that point?
Yeah. When we're working with a client, we actually coach them through that process. We've got a fairly simple structure for a sales conversation that most of our clients use. And again, the secret to this isn't so much in the closing. Mm-hmm. We've done hundreds and hundreds of sales calls, and it's funny. The magic number for everybody out there who comes on one of these calls is they close 7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what they tell us when we say, well, okay, out of every 10 prospects, how many become clients? It's always 7 out of 10. I don't know why. When we actually start working with them, what we discover is that no, it wasn't anything close to 7 out of 10. And more often than not, it's somewhere in the range of a 20 to 30% closing rate. So 2 or 3 out of 10 is what we see for really high-end sales. The problem is that most businesses who are, particularly service businesses, they might not be seeing 10 prospects in a month.
Right.
And the way to really attack this, you can take somebody with even a really horrible closing percentage, maybe only 1 out of 10. Well, if you can put them in front of a lot more people, chances are the closing rate is going to improve just from practice. And what we see most of the time is that, for your typical service provider, they're not having these conversations very often with anyone. So it's very difficult for them to get very good at it. So we attack the problem from the other end and say, let's create a system so that, after we kind of reverse engineer how many clients you want to add a month, we'll apply some percentages to that to determine how many leads we need to create. And that'll tell us exactly what we need to do and whether or not we're winning. Mm-hmm. And that's a very measurable system. And so you may be able to see how this puts together, but just to put the big picture on all of it, this is really a 4-part system. Number 1 is opening relationships. Okay. That's at the kind of top of the funnel, if you want to use the funnel analogy. The next is nurturing relationships. How many of those are we nurturing at any given time? Mm-hmm. And then the third is how many are attending this presentation and booking appointments? And then the final one is the one you ultimately want. But to get the clients that you ultimately want, you have to build a true system that has these data points along the way so that you can know when you're winning and when you're not. And mm-hmm. most people don't have any idea.
Yeah, and I like how you're breaking it into manageable pieces. I think when I work with some clients, they're like, well, I want to have a better marketing system. It's like, well, it's not a marketing system. It's these 4 things, which you could probably break into 20 things, and you have to get all these things right. And otherwise, it's too overwhelming. You're just not going to get all those pieces right as a whole. You have to individually slice them up and say, yep, the right amount of leads, the right conversion rate, all the way through. But it's a worthy effort. I mean, it makes sense to do it. But let's do like a pragmatic example. So somebody comes to you and they say, I really want to build this thing, but I really need 2 clients in the next 2 weeks. I don't have time to build this stuff. I'm going to build it, but what do I do? Do you just say, get on the phone and start calling everybody you know, and then we'll start working together? Or do you have like a technique for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it comes down to. I mean, most of the time, if somebody's in that sort of situation, the best thing you can do is sit down and make a list of everybody who might be a prospect and start emailing and calling.
Okay.
And then the real answer to that is never get in that position. Once you are in it and you get yourself out of it, we've all been in it at one point or another, whether right when we started or some other time. Once you get out of it, build the system so that you're never in it again.
Yeah, I've got to believe a lot of folks come to you when they're in that situation. Probably.
Yeah, of course.
Well, good. Well, so I like this. So this is the system, and this might be a kind of a trick question, but I've got to believe there's sales after the sales. So you help a couple companies grow, so they get through this whole process. They're getting more leads, they're getting more traffic, they're getting more sales. Is there a system afterwards that increases referrals from existing clients or add-on sales from existing clients that is a part of this model?
Yeah, there is. And that's really the system that I described in Unstoppable Referrals. And, the way that most people approach referrals is really dramatically broken. Mm-hmm. We show up, we've done a good job for somebody, and we say, so do you know anybody that could, use some more systems, in your case, need some more consulting? Do you know anybody who could really benefit from what we've done together? There's a million ways people ask it. I mean, I've seen everything from, really awkward asks like that to people who try and make it a part of their contract with the client. Part of the way we get paid is, by you sending your referrals. And all of that stuff at the end of the day puts the client in a really difficult position.
Okay.
The most difficult thing, the reason we're having this conversation today is because the most difficult thing in business is finding a prospect and then nurturing them to the point of wanting to have a meeting with you and buy, right? That's been our topic of conversation. And that's the most difficult thing to do in business. And what we're doing in a referral situation most of the time is we're going to our client and saying, you know what, I've got this really difficult thing in my business that I've not been able to do successfully myself. And I'm hoping that if I don't pay you and I don't train you, that you would maybe be able to go do it for me. And we're asking our clients, most of whom aren't professional salespeople, we're asking them to go prospect for us. And they're scared to death by that. And that's why, we've all had that experience where we've asked for a referral and then all of a sudden the client disappears. Smoke signals, emails, carrier pigeons, you can't get a hold of them anymore because they don't want to let you down. They really want to help you. They don't want to let you down, but either they're uncomfortable or they just flat don't know how to help you. Most of the time that's our fault as the business person because we've made it too hard. And so our referral strategy is a little bit different. We really use educational information to arm the client with something that they can pass on really easily. We call it a referral kit. Okay. And so I'll just walk through a really practical example of how you might do this. So Sam wrote a book, right? Great book. And if I were you or Sam wanting to get referrals from your clients, I would sit down with those clients and say, look, we've solved some big problems for you. When you came in, you were in this place. We've totally transformed things for you. And we're on a mission here at Work the System to take that same transformation to as many businesses as we possibly can. And we need your help. I know that there are likely 10 business owners that right now you could think of off the top of your head, or we could go over to your LinkedIn and you could pull up your LinkedIn for me and you could identify 10 business owners well that would totally benefit from understanding what you now understand. And what I would like to do, I don't want you to go talk to them or do anything like that. What I'd like for you to do is help me send them a gift of Sam's book as a way to open that relationship. And do it in a way that gives them value, doesn't put any pressure on them. They don't have to come do business with us. You don't have to go ask them to come have a sales meeting with me, which is what really is buried inside every ask for a referral. You're asking somebody to go have a sales meeting with somebody that you're doing business with. Right. And that's the essence of our approach, is to take some valuable information that's actually going to help that prospect, whether they do business with you or not, and ask your client to help you gift that information to the person. It can be done in book form. It can be a seminar that they're invited to, a webinar they're invited to. It can be a report, a PDF. It can take all kinds of different forms. But at the end of the day, it's designed to give value first.
So, yeah, I like that. So for those listening, what packet of information can you give that's shareable to people you're already working with so that they can then share it? And I think what I'm realizing also is that you're asking them to open their network so that you can start the very beginning, not, hey, send me a client that I can go sell. Hey, send me a client that I can go educate and nurture, and maybe 10 months from now I'll sell them something, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. I'm just looking to expand this information. And that's way less risky for the current client because they don't have to feel like they're trying to push their friends into a direct sales situation.
Well, you're very astute to pick up on that. And that's the key. I mean, we all want to get those pre-sold clients and we all get those referrals, and they're awesome when we get them, and when you get one like that, you help them, you sell them. Right. But those are generally fairly inconsistent and few and far between in most businesses. So if you take this other approach that's less risky for your client to make that opening introduction, and does it in a way that actually makes them look like a hero. And it does. I mean, it's incredible to watch. Anytime somebody will take, like, for example, if you used your, Sam's book, and you had a client send that out to 10 people, your client's going to get thanked. He's going to get thank you notes. Now, contrast that to the way that we normally do referrals. How often do you get thank you notes from the times you've made referrals, right?
Yeah, probably never. Yeah.
No, probably never. It reinforces that referral behavior. And so what we see when our clients apply this is that their clients will come back and say, hey, can we do that again? That worked really well. You have some more books I could share? And your
Yeah.
clients start prompting you to see, how they can help you. What you're doing is you're making it very, very easy for them to help you. And you're taking all the risk out of the equation for them.
Well, I'm making some notes as you're talking, because that's, we have a few little referral systems built in, but I have a new idea now that I think will work really well. So this is good. I knew this is one of the reasons why I had you on. I was like, this is something that I want to improve. And what Sam always says is that you already have systems. I mean, you already have referral systems and generation systems and sales systems, but they might just be really beat up, torn apart, and not working very well. And it's about either refining those, like in the case of we have referral systems, but they're not as refined as I want them to be, or you got to build a new one. But these are all very pragmatic. And that seems to be the way people who are good at growing businesses are, is they have tools that are pragmatic, that are repeatable, maybe not the sexiest thing in the world, because you mentioned, hey, this is actually a pretty simple process, but execution is hard. It does take time. It does take, I think also what it takes, and I'm noticing this with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, is that it takes leadership, right? You actually have to be willing to say, you know what, this is not going to make me a sale tomorrow or maybe even next week. But if we stay the course, we're going to be set apart. We're going to be different than the other guys. And once we hit our rhythm, the sky's the limit. And other folks, they're going to be 10 months or 2 years behind, and they can't catch up. I think that's the one big benefit you're giving people. Especially you have a done for you service, right? So
we do. Yeah. I mean, we discovered that most business owners don't want to become master marketers. They want to focus on what they were trained to do business in. And so this is what we're expert at. Just like you'd go hire your attorney or your accountant or whatever. We offer that for our clients. And you bring up a good point. There are a lot of people out there promising that they can deliver you results yesterday, because that's what sells. And I can tell you, I've done all kinds of marketing. I've done everything from direct mail back, before the internet was really a viable way to market, all the way through, running Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads. It really was striking to me. I was talking with a business owner yesterday, and he had been paying an ad agency. The ad agency was charging him like $900 a month, and he was paying like then 200 more than that in ads. In other words, he was spending more on the person to run the ads than the ads themselves. Uh-huh. And he didn't have a whole heck of a lot of budget to begin with. And he needed pretty quick results from it. And I will tell you that I've yet to find anything that delivers immediate results. And the reason is that it has nothing to do with the medium, it has everything to do with how good your offer is and how closely it's matched to the people that you're targeting. Mm-hmm. Coming back around to this idea of ideal client. That's one of the reasons that people, when we work with a client, they accelerate when we get focused, because it's now much easier to get the message aligned. Mm-hmm. And we see people jump from one strategy to the next, to the next, to the next, whether it's Instagram or, somebody said they need to be on Snapchat and then they're on Facebook and, this and that and the other. And I'll tell you the number one biggest marketing secret nobody will ever tell you. It all works.
Yeah.
It all works if you stick with it long enough and master it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And if you pick the right medium too, right? Probably not a lot of attorneys on Instagram.
No, I mean, yeah, and there you go. You want to go and find the one that's going to hit the right people. But what we tell folks, so for anybody listening to this, wondering, well, how do I put all this to work? I'm not saying don't ever do those other things, but the first thing you have to validate is who you're selling to, and is the way that you're communicating with them. In other words, the offer that you're making a match. It's something that they go, yeah, I want to buy that. And the fastest and least risky way to do that is to start with your network and your referrals. That'll allow you to validate that message. And then you can take everything that you've done there and discovered there, and then you can add paid media, whether it's direct mail offline media, print media or online. And you can do it now with a whole lot more confidence that it's going to be successful.
Good advice. Good advice. Now, final question, because I know we're running out of time here. Where can the audience go to find out more information about you and then to hear your podcast? You've got a great podcast with a lot of great information there. I know I was on there a few weeks ago.
Here recently.
So it's a great place for folks to go to get more information. So where do they go?
They can go to unstoppableceo.net. We've got all kinds of things there to help you, some free stuff that'll help you. And you can find our podcast there and all about what we do.
Good. Well, very good. Well, thanks, Steve. I learned a lot. I was taking notes. Hopefully those listening took some notes as well. Great information and very useful for anyone who's trying to grow their business through referrals and build that credibility in the market. So thanks again, Steve. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.